Yada yada. Happy New Year on the channel, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to the DST show. We are going to go over a bit of football now. And it's been a tough year if you're a Las Vegas Raider fan and a Denver Broncos fan. Because coming over this 2022 from the last off season, the AFC West was the team to be. I mean, four teams contenders with four franchise quarterbacks with a lot of great weapons, giving big money to premier athletes that can make a major difference, especially over the defensive side of the ball. Yet I feel like the only clutch defensive unit on the AFC West has to go to the Denver Broncos. They at least average around 18 points for the opposition over the past several weeks, even though they come up losing, and their only shutout performance was against the Los Angeles Rams the week prior, even though they lost to their second consecutive loss after losing 14 straight losses to the Kansas City Chiefs. Even getting Russell Wilson really didn't change much. But I think more people expected at least somewhat of a fight out of the Las Vegas Raiders. They're 6-9 over to the season, and yet most people expected at least two teams to be three or four teams to be sub 500, fighting for a divisional lead, like the AFC West and NFC West. They're not only a one or at least sub 500 from keeping over a wild card opportunity over the more struggling team being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that are 7-9. That I feel like is fabricated. I feel like it's completely, one-sided because the media wants Tom Brady to make at least one postseason push before he gets destroyed in the first round. I like Josh Jacobs, Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Derek Carr, getting Chandler Jones, a lot of veteran and all-pro talent, especially over the Devontae Adams trade. Leaving him out over about refusing to take over a franchise tag, still struggling to win playoff series with Aaron Rodgers, and of course his locker room scuffles and Rodgers fleeting or not to if he wants to stay in Green Bay or not. And I guess Devontae Adams didn't want that headache, and plus he wants to deal with a guy that he at least knew from college that he has better chemistry with. And don't get me wrong, Devontae Adams is still putting up Pro Bowl numbers, even to the struggle and miscommunication that he's having with his team. Of course, more people out of the little fight that he had with the cameraman on prime time when they faced the Kansas City Chiefs off that terrible miss route with him and Hunter Renfrow. He's still putting up good numbers. He'll go for 40 yards. I think he had like 2 straight touchdowns when he faced off against the San Francisco 49ers just last night. And one of the bigger games of the night for still, the NFC West champions, and pushed them over 34 points a game, putting that to overtime, where Robbie Gould, of course, won it by a game-winning field goal after missing a 41-yarder earlier in the fourth quarter, and Robbie Gould had to do a 23-yard field goal to win it over an amazing drive. The Raiders can do defensive breakdowns, but guess what? Derek Carr didn't even play. Second-string quarterback Jarek Stidham did well. Some backup from the Patriots came over after they benched Derek Carr, and he put up 365 passing yards with only 2 picks, but he had 3 touchdowns. So Devontae Adams was 11 of 7 with 153 yards with 2 TDs. That type of production cannot be unmatched. And yet they did it with backup quarterbacks. And also, even though the Eagles got bum rushed by the Saints the same day, literally Gardner Minshew comes and plays the same result. Because you literally get carried by an amazing amount of skilled players and offensive depth, because their secondary's mid. Nobody ever wants to admit that, because the Eagles literally play against injury-prone, sub-500 teams still fighting for barely division lead. Screw the Eagles. I still come to terms with them saying that they're frauds. Honestly, the Raiders are having a better second half of the season than starting losing for their first 5 games before heading over to their bye that was around October. But losing to Jacksonville, losing to the struggling New Orleans Saints that are now second in their division, and then the Indianapolis Colts, and only having more wins convincingly in overtime than they can ever winning by at least a score. It's kind of embarrassing. They at least have the most allowance of points off their opposition. It is not fun. Their depth sucks. It's either Denzel Perryman or nothing, or Max Crosby that has the best hurry and pressure on the line off a cover blitz, being the best edge rusher. He has 3 forced fumbles. He's going to be a Pro Bowler this season. And possibly Derek Carr, already with the disbelief coming from the front office, has struggled to, mesh over with his receiving core, and just trying to push over Hero Ball, they're probably not going to want him. So he's possibly going to go to New York Jets, because they're more desperate over Mike White, Joe Flacco, and a struggling, third-year quarterback, fourth-year quarterback out of Zach Wilson, that's still barely even following his stride, bro. There is no future. There is no future for this Raider squad. It's either high road or just slope, because there's no offensive depth. There's no defensive depth at all. I mean, yeah, Nate Hobbs, Sim, their secondary's terrible. Chandler Jones, yeah, he's played a majority of the games over his 15 that started. He has at least a 4 or 5 sack rating. That's not even as much as what Max Crosby does with his pressure, and he gets a lot more impact on the defensive side. And he's playing like D tackle. Unless you're Belial Nichols, only the front line only does much. I bet George Kittle had at least one passing touchdown around the red zone, and they were still trying to push cover 2 on it, and they still can't, stop the deep ball. Raiders have blown at least the most leads in the NFL with at least 4 choke jobs over at least a 5-point differential. They suck. I think they choked a 17-point lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They choked a 10-point lead in the last couple of moments against the Rams. That shutout off that literally, Josh Jacobs is the only thing holding that offense together to be stable. When they got shut out 24-0 against the Saints, and Taysom Hill ran his ass off on that team, there has not been a clutch defensive unit on that Raiders squad, bruh. Literally, they allow at least over 350 up to 400-yard games. There's a career game every time you see, if you see the Raiders games. I swear, for the opposite team. And now here they are facing off against the Kansas City Chiefs on the home game like it's going to help anything. This is already your second straight. The only positive is this is your first overtime loss against the San Francisco 49ers. And you let the Steelers destroy you after the loss of Franco Harris. There's no positive way how to say this. It's either blow the team up, blow it up. I guess there's a certain amount of humility for the Denver Broncos for Russell Wilson to go anywhere, because there's a bang for their buck for Russell Wilson. They just need an above-average young quarterback or free agent quarterback to do something. Do not get Carson Wentz, but just do something with this team. Try to pack up some pressure, or at least a reasonable Darius Slay could be available next season, or something. You know how many available quarterbacks are around the next offseason? I know Daniel Jones is possibly going to be re-signed, but for the NFL offseason, there's a bunch of quarterbacks that can play a major factor. And yet, the Raiders are possibly just going to let it fly. I don't know why. And I'm not saying this to be pessimistic. I want to see teams that, struggle to win a Lombardi succeed. But they keep taking that upon themselves. And you're seeing right now why it's such an issue for the Raiders still not to even win a playoff game in over a decade. If we look at the quarterback position for next season, there's at least Sam Darnold, Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo that's going to be over an expiring unrestricted free agent deal with a market value of it, I think, over $34 million of annual salary over his expiring $7 million contract after $143 million. So that's $34 a year. That's at least 11th higher ranking in the NFL. Daniel Jones is possibly going to re-sign with the Giants after this season, putting them in a near above 500 record and possibly their first playoff push in 2016. Geno Smith after a comeback season. Possibly a lot of major threats. Taylor Heineke or Lamar Jackson. Anybody can take Derek Carr's spot over in Vegas and possibly make it a more reasonable team. And yeah, I don't know what the Raiders are going to do, because their owner is looking like 1/3 of the Three Stooges while being autistic, while wasting away what he had as a franchise over in Oakland of a dedicated fan base. Already screwing over their depth, wasting Khalil Mack's career, Namdi Asamoah, and Darren McFadden. A lot of great, amazing players that could be Hall of Famers someday. And yet, now they're wasting away Derek Carr's career. And he had an emotional breakdown. Josh Jacobs had an emotional breakdown. No one knows what to suspect from this franchise. Especially over the season. That has to be the most underwhelming off-season of the NFL. The only positive is at least over the injuries the Los Angeles Chargers had, they're still playoff bound. Most people expected the derail of the Kansas City Chiefs after losing Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu. With Kelsey having a career year for a tight end for any receiver to have over this offseason. And Jaren McKinnon and their front five being the best in the NFL. Kansas City Chiefs are still possibly a championship contender. And yet the Raiders are still mediocre. That's the saddest part of all. And even the Jets now look like, remember that zero blitz play we saw back in 2020? Now that's making me feel like the Jets can clean their clock any time of the week now. With Mike White. Mike White! You tell me how you guys feel about this. I obviously do not want to stress out even more. Obviously, emotional white supremacist Derek Carr is possibly going to be leaving this offseason over and we're already getting benched before there's 2 games. Now there's 1 game left over in the offseason. And there's already suspects of Devontae Adams possibly leaving. This franchise can't catch a break. Thanks for watching the DST show. Like, comment, subscribe, and hope you guys enjoy and do the best with what you can with this 2023. Also, you can do your best by subscribing, liking, and sharing so this channel can get up to 500. Thanks for watching the DST show. That's it for me.